Most of the myths and legends of India are derived from ancient religious texts. They've been passed down through the ages, enthralling generations of readers and listeners. But over the years, they've also been interpreted as portals and doorways, giving insight into the future of humanity. This is Unveiled, and today we are exploring 4 bizarre predictions from ancient Indian texts.
Are you a fiend for facts? Are you constantly curious? Then why not subscribe to Unveiled for more clips like this one and ring the bell for more fascinating content?
We'll start on a somewhat pessimistic note. A key concept for today's video is that in Hinduism, time is cyclical. Each cycle lasts 4,320,000 years and is comprised of 4 great seasons or yugas: Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. According to various ancient texts, we're now in the last of those, the Kali Yuga. It's generally described as being 432,000 years long and is said to have begun in the year 3102 BC, at the climax of an epic war, the Kurukshetra War. So while we're already some 5,000 years through this final season, there are still 426,000 years left for it to run. But the bad news is that the world of the Kali Yuga isn't a good one. And our first bizarre prediction for the future of humanity is, well, that we've only just begun an age of unrelenting darkness, misery, and vice. With each yuga, humanity's moral and physical well-being deteriorates, which means that the Kali Yuga is the summit of our deterioration, the pinnacle of all of our problems. And unfortunately, it's been invariably highlighted how we can seemingly see signs of the Kali Yuga all around us today. In this most unfortunate of seasons, humanity's spiritual purpose is said to have diminished. Wealth becomes the key metric, but it's often guided by deceit and corruption. Law and order are then guided by wealth, while the collection of taxes hangs heavy over a busy, bustling society. These conditions are then worsened by things like war, conflict, famine, drought, harsh weather, and disease, leading to more and more suffering. As part of the Kali Yuga, it's the most corrupt who rise to political power, and they use that power to control everyone else. For those more inclined with a cynical worldview, then the most bizarre aspect to these predictions might only be how close to real life they appear to fall. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's because today's second bizarre prediction for the future is World War III. Thankfully, the Kali Yuga story concludes with the eventual arrival of a messianic figure known as Kalki. At the latest, this should happen around the year 428,899, but some say it could happen before then. It's said that Kalki, the 10th and last incarnation of the god Vishnu, will one day bring the cycle of yugas to an end, refresh the seasons, and move us back to the first yuga, the Satya Yuga, which should be a golden age. It's just that between now and then, it's predicted that rampant corruption, poverty, greed, hatred, and intolerance will have utterly deprived humanity of its soul, and World War III could be the endgame for all of those issues. While the great Kalki's arrival does have the upside of bringing this nightmarish time to an end, it's also said that it will happen only following a great war. A war vast and devastating enough that it will leave the world in total ruin. And today, most onlookers agree that World War III will do exactly that. Most texts stop short of going into great detail about what the war could look like, and most don't suggest that it's coming tomorrow. But it is coming, and when it happens, humanity will have perhaps reached its lowest ebb. Of course, we know that human history is already strife with war, conflict, and suffering. But we also know that, somewhat ironically, some wars have served as a means toward technological advancement as well. And in Hindu mythology, wars have often been portrayed in this way, wherein they too feature the use of imaginative machines and contraptions. One such machine, the Vimana, particularly stands out as it appears to be a prediction. Today's third prediction toward modern-day spaceflight and propulsion technology. The ancient Vimanas were machines piloted by the gods. They came in all shapes and sizes and were multi-use, made for land and sea as well as for space travel. References to them have been found in many ancient texts, including the Hindu epic Mahabharata, and another more contemporary text, the Vimanas Shastra. One particular passage in the Mahabharata, for example, provides a description of the Vimana that's reminiscent of jet propulsion, referring to them, quote, radiating light and carrying a, quote, deep rumbling sound. The Vimanas Shastra also includes similar references, indicating, for instance, that the Vimana propulsion was enabled by the use of rotating gyroscopes of electricity and mercury, in what's essentially a vortex engine. Importantly, the Vimanas Shastra was penned less than 100 years ago, so it can by no means be considered an ancient text. Plus, a 1974 study of it carried out by the Indian Institute of Science found that the crafts detailed within it were unfeasible and were much more closer to fictional steampunk flying machines than real life. Nevertheless, this hasn't stopped theorists from listing it as the last in a long line of works that seemingly preempt the engines, systems, and machines developed by the likes of NASA ever since the 1950s. But finally, Hindu scriptures touch on many more cosmological concepts too, not just space travel. The legend of Revati, found in the Vishnu Purana text, for example, provides the basis for today's fourth bizarre prediction, that humanity and the world is shaped by time dilation. It's estimated that the Vishnu Purana was composed between 1,100 and 2,200 years ago, and yet it includes within it a mode of thought more in tune with Albert Einstein and 20th century science. In the story, Revati is the daughter of King Kakudmi, a descendant of the sun god Surya. Believing that no human is worthy enough to marry his daughter, Kakudmi takes Revati to seek counsel with the god Brahma the creator. When they arrive at Brahma's abode, they wait a short time while the god watches a musical performance. Then, when they explain the situation to him, and when Kakudmi requests that a suitable partner be found for his daughter while presenting a short list of candidates, Brahma laughs. He explains that time isn't the same across different levels of existence. So, within the short time that Kakudmi and Revati had awaited his counsel, 108 yugas, that's more than 100 million years, had passed on Earth. Which means that every suitor on Kakudmi's shortlist will have died long ago, as well as all of his and Revati's friends, family, and everyone they'd ever known. Returning to Earth, Kakudmi and Revati marveled at the incredible changes that have taken place on their home planet during what had seemed a brief visit to Brahma. And again they bear witness to the shocking extent of humanity's regression, having been away from it for so long. But regardless of how humanity may have fared, the central concept here is literally millennia ahead of its time. Time dilation is a relatively modern school of scientific thought, but the ancient scholars appear to have predicted its nature within this story. Now we see it as a basis for scientific experiment and science fiction, with various movies featuring characters who age differently to everyone else because of the physical journeys they take through space and reality. But really, Revati was the first to take that trip. Such is the rich and huge history and tradition that the ancient texts cover. It would be impossible to summarize all of them within one video, but we can see in just these 4 cases that the earliest works at times provided a window into the future. And part of that future is what we're living in today. The nods towards space travel and flying machines certainly fit. The discussion around time and the true nature of reality still feels very modern. It remains to be seen whether World War III will take hold, and perhaps it's an issue of contention as to whether all the worst parts of the Kali Yuga really are taking place today. But for now, those are 4 bizarre predictions from ancient Indian texts.
What do you think? Is there anything we missed? Let us know in the comments, check out these other clips from Unveiled, and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for our latest content.